Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we are here to talk a little MACtion. It is week 2 of MACtion for the 2024 season, and we're going to be talking about the Tuesday, November 12th slate. We've got 3 games of MACtion going on. They all kick off at 7 p.m., and we're here to talk about it from a DFS perspective. So we're going to break down all 3 games and tell you what you can expect from each of these 3 MACtion games, as well as who needs to be in or out of your DraftKings and FanDuel lineups for this Tuesday night slate. Now, if you have not already, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That we can be with us for all of our college football content through the rest of the season, as well as our college basketball content as well. We are actually going to have an episode of college basketball coming out later tonight. That's right. I'm doing double duty tonight, which makes for a little bit of a late night, but hey, it's all good. It's the best time of the year for sports. We got a lot going on, and I'm doing the research anyway, so I might as well be putting the content out. So, make sure you're subscribed so you can be here with us for all of that. And then also make sure you check out our main slate preview for week 12 of the college football season. That is going to be releasing tomorrow night. All right, so we've got 3 games of MACtion to talk about. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Honestly, this is a slate in terms of MACtion where last week we could kind of build our lineups just by playing whoever we wanted and just kind of, play the best plays, play the guys that, are going to score the most points, because there really wasn't a whole lot of salary restrictions. There really wasn't a whole lot of goofy or wonky game environments. This one's going to have a little bit of stretch. There's going to have to be some checks and balances that you're going to have to make in your lineup. There are some guys that you're going to need to know about. There are some situations that you're going to need to know about. So there's a little more to break down here on this slate than on the previous few. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started and talk about game number 1. All right, so the first game of the Tuesday night slate is Ball State heading to Buffalo. Ball State was supposed to be really bad at the start of the year, and they've ended up being actually not terrible for once. They're kind of been a little bit of a pleasant surprise in the MAC. But in this game, Buffalo is 4-point favorites with a game total of 53.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 29-25 in favor of the Buffalo Bulls. This is the closest game environment, the kind of the smallest spread on the entire slate. So if there's one that you're kind of thinking might end up going back and forth, this would probably be a pretty good nominee for that, in my opinion. These 2 teams are kind of evenly matched, and they're not good defenses when you look at it. So on the Ball State side, Ball State ranks 26th in the nation in pass rate, and they're going up against a Buffalo defense that is more prone to the pass than the run. Buffalo ranks 116th in the nation in passing yards allowed per game. Buffalo ranks 84th in the nation in rushing yards allowed per game. So they're a better run defense than they are pass defense, but Ball State is going to look to pass it. So Caden Samanza is a guy that we played a lot of last week against Miami, Ohio. He was a little bit of a disappointment, but it comes in the fact that he only accounted for 1 touchdown. He didn't get his 300-yard bonus, and he had negative rushing yards. So really, he just kind of had, I think, a little bit of an unlucky game last week. It was his lowest fantasy point total of conference play so far. But the fact that he did have 36 passing attempts, the fact that he did almost have 300 yards, the fact that he is on an offense that is going up against a bad defense, I think absolutely makes him in play here on this one. Again, last week he only accounted for 1 touchdown and his team scored 21 points. I just don't think he's going to run that bad again. And I think he's a pretty good look at 6,500 here on this slate. And like I said, I think this game is very likely to turn into a shootout. At the running back position for Ball State, they really abandoned the run last week against Miami, Ohio. They trailed for most of that game, so they did not run a lot of guys at all. Braden Sloan, their starting running back, who also sees a ton of usage in the passing game, only had 3 carries and 1 catch last week, just wasn't involved at all. Vaughn Pemberton, the backup running back, had 5 carries. I don't know what to make of the fact that Pemberton did have more carries than Sloan, but to me, it's just interesting that they totally abandoned the run. That's something that could absolutely happen here again because they are projected to lose in this one. And what's also ironic is their backup quarterback, Kyle Kelly, actually led them in carries also. He had 7 carries. And I actually, I'm pretty sure he's a backup quarterback. Is he listed as a receiver on DraftKings now? No. Okay, that's weird. I don't know why he's not even listed at the quarterback position, but he did have 7 carries last week. So that is worth noting. Now, at the wide receiver position, their tight end Tanner Koziel is still their significant target leader on the season. Had a little bit of a down game against Miami, Ohio. Did not find the end zone. He'd been pretty much averaging 9 catches per week for the majority of the season, and he only had 4 against Miami, Ohio, but he was still targeted 10 times. He's still the guy that you're going to want to be looking at here in this passing offense. That's the most consistent, in my opinion. Now, Cam Pickett is the guy who had been pretty much operating as the number 1 wide receiver, not tight end for the entire season. Against Miami, Ohio, he did catch 4 passes for 18 yards, ran the ball twice as well. This is a guy who's regularly involved in the game plan, and I think it's certainly worth a look in DFS. But the guy we got to talk about is Justin Bowick. Out of nowhere against Miami, Ohio, he had 8 catches, 171 yards, and a touchdown, 34.1 fantasy points, 11 targets in that game, kind of out of nowhere. If you think that this is a one-game aberration, then you can fade him. If you think that this is a sign of things to come, then you play him. I think he's going to be pretty popular because of his price tag not getting adjusted really at all, after he had this huge game. When you really look at it, he was kind of coming out of injury for majority of the season. He was hurt until week 8, played in week 8 and week 9. So maybe week 11 was just like his first introduction to like the starting lineup. And maybe he is a guy who's going to be regularly involved in the offense for weeks to come. The other two guys that do play a lot are Magwood and Gilly, but I would rather just be playing Pickett and Bowick, who are only slightly more expensive and have much more clearly defined roles in the offense. On the Buffalo side, they have got quarterback CJ Ogbonna. He's not bad, but he's not great. He's played 5 conference games so far, and he's been between 23 and 29 fantasy points in 3 of them. And honestly, we would take that at 7,300. This is a pretty solid game environment. Ball State's defense is not good. Ball State ranks 131st in the nation in pass defense. There's only 3 teams worse, and they're rank 104th in the nation in rush defense. Buffalo is a team that is a little bit more run heavy. They do rank 39th in the nation in rush rate, but their quarterback CJ Ogbonna is a guy who can run it as well. So like I said, to me, this game has all the makings of a shootout because it's between 2 bad defenses, and I think Ogbonna is certainly a guy who can take advantage of it. With Buffalo having a high rush rate, LJ Henderson is a guy who can benefit as well. He's had over 13 fantasy points in every conference game so far. He is very clearly the running back 1 on this team. He's getting carries at a little over a 60-40 split ahead of Jaquez Barksdale on the season, but it's been even more than that in recent weeks. So LJ Henderson is certainly a guy that you're going to want to target at the running back position here this week. At the wide receiver position, Victor Snow is the wide receiver 1 for this team. He's one of the best wide receiver plays on this slate. Again, this is a game that is probably going to feature a lot of scoring, probably going to go back and forth, and is very likely to turn into a shootout. And I think that really makes for a good argument to play Victor Snow at $5,000 even. After him, J.J. Jenkins is really the only wide receiver with consistent production. Against Akron in their last game, he did have 5 catches, 57 yards, and a touchdown. So really, if I'm being honest, I would be keeping my Buffalo passing exposure to those 2 guys, knowing that they're going to look to run the ball quite a bit, knowing that Ball State is a very bad pass defense. I do think those 2 guys make a lot of sense as targets here on this slate. Next up, game number 2, we've got Western Michigan taking on Bowling Green. Bowling Green is currently 8.5-point favorites in this game with a game total of 58.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 34-25 in favor of Bowling Green. This is the highest game total on the slate. Bowling Green is the highest implied team total on the slate, so there's certainly going to be a lot of scoring in this one, but how these 2 teams look to score is totally different. On the Western Michigan side, they rank 25th in the nation in rush rate. This is a super run-heavy team. And fortunately for them, it's a good matchup for teams who like to run the football. Bowling Green ranks 88th in the nation in rush yards allowed, 7th in the nation in pass yards allowed. Very good pass defense on Bowling Green so far this season. So really, you're going to want to be targeting this Western Michigan team through the run game. They do have Hayden Wolf at quarterback. It was not great against Northern Illinois, and that was a game where they scored 28 points, and he only accounted for 1 touchdown. He has no rushing upside. I really think there's better quarterback plays on this slate than Hayden Wolf, and so he's probably not going to be a guy who I'm going to get to in a lot of my lineups. At the running back position, it's super interesting because Jaden Nixon had the big game last week, 12 carries, 95 yards, and 2 touchdowns, 23.3 fantasy points. It was his 3rd straight and 6th out of 7, 6 out of 7 games he's been over 22 fantasy points. Like, that's a long streak. And he's been pretty good, but here's the thing. Jalen Buckley was coming into the season as the starting running back and did nothing to lose his job except get hurt. He actually had more carries last week than Jaden Nixon. 16 carries, 80 yards, also caught 2 passes out of the backfield. So I'm going to be honest, while Nixon is a good play, certainly high upside play, the fact that Buckley got more carries than him, I would rather pay Buckley at $2,000 cheaper than to play Nixon at $7,700. That's just how I personally see it. And this team is going to run the ball enough that both of these guys should see carries, should see double-digit carries, should see good usage, should absolutely have enough opportunity to hit value for their price tag. And oh, by the way, don't forget about Zahir Abdus-Salam, who's also going to get carries. He had 4 of them last week against Northern Illinois. So to me, these Western Michigan running backs make for great targets. One thing we do need to keep in mind, though, also is that while Western Michigan does not throw the ball a ton, they are very condensed when they do. Kenneth Womack and Anthony Sambucci are finally healthy, and these are really the 2 guys that this passing offense is going to run through. I really don't anticipate myself targeting a whole lot of guys outside of them, too. The tight end Blake Bosma was great when either one of them was, unhealthy. I guess inactive would be the better way to say that. When one of the receivers was out, Bosma was a great play. But last week when both of them were in, 1 catch, 6 yards, he's probably a pass for me here on this slate. And then the other guy that is, kind of regularly involved is Jordan Parker. He did have 2 catches, 41 yards last week. So really, I'm not super interested in any of these guys outside of that group. Kavion Mack looks good on the game log, but he didn't have a catch last week. So definitely going to keep my Western Michigan passing exposure to Womack and Sambucci. Maybe a punt play with Jordan Parker, but I think there's other punt plays out there on this slate. On the Bowling Green side, they rank 48th in the nation in pass rate. This is a team that is going to look to throw the ball to score their points. Western Michigan's a pretty good matchup no matter how you want to slice it, though. They rank 107th in the nation in rush yards allowed per game and 114th in the nation in passing yards allowed per game. So really, however you want to score, Western Michigan will let you. That was kind of the case last week against Northern Illinois, where even though Northern Illinois' starting running back got hurt, they were still able to effectively run the ball, still able to get in the end zone quite a bit and score 42 points in that game. Connor Bazelak is Bowling Green's quarterback, and he's solid. The fantasy point totals will not blow you away. But here on this slate where all the quarterbacks are kind of priced even, why would you not place a bet on the guy who has the highest implied team total? So I think Bazelak is absolutely going to make my player pool. Like I said, the game log's nothing impressive, but this is a team that we know is going to throw the ball, a team that we know is going to score points. So I think he's a pretty comfortable click in that regard. At the running back position, Terrion Stewart is one of the best running back plays on the slate, in my opinion. He's got 20 carries in 4 games out of his last 5, and he's only scored 1 touchdown in that stretch. To me, he is due for some touchdown regression, and Bowling Green's implied to score about 5 of them here on this slate. So I think there's a great chance that he finds the end zone. He is one of my favorites at the running back position on this slate. His backup, Jason Patterson, actually is the one that found the end zone last week. 9 carries, 71 yards, and a touchdown. Really, if he were cheaper, I would be super interested. But there's starting running backs I could get for cheaper than that are probably going to see more of a workload. Jalen Buckley is cheaper than that. So while Patterson does have good recent production, his role is not currently worthy of his price tag. At the wide receiver position, Bowling Green's best receiver option actually isn't a wide receiver. It's Harold Fannin Jr. He has been great for the entire season. There's just no other way to slice it. He's just been one of the best receiving options in all of college football. He's priced at $8,000 even. He's worth every penny. Last week, I think he was 96% owned in the DraftKings contest. I played a 20 max and I had him out of 1, so I had him at 95% and I was underweight to the field, which is kind of crazy to think about. So I think he's just a really easy click. Yes, he's expensive here on this slate, but there's nobody else on this slate that possesses the same upside at the wide receiver position that he does. After Fannin, Johnson Jr. is their second most productive wide receiver. He's been decent throughout the season. He's got 33 catches. He's not a bad option. I think 5,300 is a little bit rich for my blood there, though. But a guy I will be playing is Raheem Smith. This is a guy that, the last 2 weeks, he's gotten 5 total catches and 4 total carries out of the backfield. They're making a concerted effort to get the ball in his hands, and that's the type of play we like at a cheap price tag of $4,200, where he's going to see the field, he's going to get the ball in his hands. And then Levi Gazarek has been kind of running hot with touchdowns. He scored touchdowns in each of the last 2 Bowling Green games. However, those have been his only 2 catches. If you think he finds the end zone again, $3,800 is not a bad price tag, but that's quite unlikely to continue, in my opinion, considering it's happened twice in a row. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then let's talk about the last game of the night. All right, so before we continue, I do want to mention that there are places where you can get more information from me. First off, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have for me if you reach out on Twitter. I also do try to tweet out any updates for the show that are important out there on Twitter. I'm also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. Link is in the description on YouTube as well as on the audio feed. Basically, the Fantasy Corner Discord is a 100% free community where we've just got a lot of people that play DFS for a lot of different sports. I'm talking college football, college basketball, NFL, NBA, MLB. We got it all covered. And we're just constantly in there talking, discussing lineups, talking plays, talking strategy. And if you're just looking for people to talk DFS with, it's a great place to go. I cannot recommend it enough if you're just looking for people to talk with. And then also, I do write an article to my Patreon for every single college football DFS slates. Even when I don't make an episode, I have an article to my Patreon that profiles my core plays as well as why they're my core plays. So if you are interested in who actually makes my lineups after all this research, that is the place where you can go to check it out, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. All right, so let's go ahead and continue on with the last game of the night, which is Central Michigan taking on Toledo. This is in my opinion, very likely to be the most lopsided game of the night. And Vegas agrees. Toledo is 14.5-point favorites with a game total of 50.5, which is actually the lowest on the slate. However, with it being so lopsided, Toledo is still implied to score about 32 points, with Central Michigan implied to score about 18. So this is a game that I personally anticipate Toledo to win by multiple scores. Central Michigan, it all boils down to their quarterback position. They're currently out Joe Labas and Bert Emanuel Jr. Last week, they started Tyler Jefferson, and he was just dreadful against Bowling Green. The one thing he did do well is he did run for a touchdown, which made it an 11 fantasy point day, which still ain't going to cut it. And then in the second half, they played Jaden Glasser. He was much better from a passing perspective. He also ran for a rushing touchdown as well. If he gets the start, I don't know. Maybe it's like one of those like the old Family Guy joke where, he's like, hey, a mystery box could be anything, even a boat. Maybe Glasser is a boat in the mystery box, right? Like he's $5,500. I think he's a guy that if you're really looking to get freaky in a GPP and get weird and get different with your lineup, he's a way you could do that if he ends up getting the start. But like I said, I still don't even know if he's going to start. It still might be Tyler Jefferson again, but I certainly have no interest in Jefferson if he is the starter. Now, if you're thinking, well, why wouldn't I just play a Central Michigan running back then if they can't throw? That's not a bad idea. They do rank 28th in the nation in rush rate. And Toledo is not the worst defense in the world. They're not the best defense either. They rank 51st in the nation in rushing yards allowed, which is pretty stout, 81st in the nation in passing yards allowed. So this is not a great matchup on paper. But when you look at Marion Lukes, who is their primary running back, he has been very much a victim of the poor QB play. The last two games where Tyler Jefferson has started, he's accounted for 9.7 fantasy points combined in both games. It's not good. It's not going to cut it. And so I'm really just not interested in playing him for that reason. This team needs to be able to move the ball on offense for Lukes to be able to score fantasy points. At the wide receiver position, just as bad as the quarterback play has been, I don't think you can play any of them. Chris Parker is their wide receiver 1. Solomon Davis is their wide receiver 2. Gavin Harris is the tight end. We were right last week about Jesse Pruitt playing more snaps. However, it only turned into 1 catch for 6 yards. So I just really don't feel the need to target any of these guys when we don't know if there's going to be any kind of consistent quarterback play that's going to be throwing them the ball. Now, the Toledo side is the quite opposite. This team is implied to score 32 points, and Central Michigan's a much better matchup on paper than Toledo is defensively. Toledo does rank 38th in the nation in pass rate, so Tucker Gleason is a pretty solid play at the quarterback position all around. You look at his MAC games, and they've been really, really good. Only one MAC game this season has he been under 28 DraftKings points. Yeah, he's played 4 of them, and he's only been under 28 DraftKings points in 1 of them. That is quite impressive. So this is a guy with a high ceiling. He does bring rushing upside. He's the most expensive quarterback play on the slate, and he's the best quarterback play on the slate, in my opinion. If you were to ask me, pick one quarterback, it's going to be Tucker Gleason, and I'm going to make the rest of my lineup work around him because I do think he is probably the best quarterback play on the slate. If I was not playing Gleason in my lineup, then what I would be looking to do is looking to game stack or team stack it up by saying, okay, I'm not playing Gleason. I'm going to play Ogbonna and Samanza from the Ball State Buffalo game. Or I'm not playing Gleason. I'm going to play Basilak for Bowling Green, and I'm going to pair him with 2 of his pass catchers or something like that. Like Gleason is the best option, just bottom line. And if you're looking to get different otherwise, that's fine. But to me, he's the best quarterback playing this slate. At the running back position, it does get interesting for Toledo. If you're not playing Gleason, you're going to want to play Toledo running back because they're projected to win this game by multiple scores, and I think it could be even more than that. What's really interesting is that Savon Clark actually led the team in rush attempts last week. 10 carries, 78 yards, also caught 1 pass for 11 yards, 9.9 DraftKings points. That's not bad for a guy who's only $3,500. And like I said, he did lead the team in carries. It's unknown if that's going to continue, though, because this was very much a committee last week. After Clark, Connor Walenzak also had 10 carries, also caught 2 passes for 16 yards, 7.4 fantasy points in that one. So both of these guys at a price tag of $4,000 and $3,500 are very in play for me as cheap running back plays because we definitely think they're going to get carries, especially considering this game could turn into a blowout. And oh, by the way, I haven't mentioned Jacquez Stewart, who's a guy I was really high on in the preseason. He's a really good receiver out of the backfield. He's a converted wide receiver. He was supposed to be their starting running back heading into the season, has been banged up. He saw 7 carries in that game last week against Eastern Michigan. So this was very much a three-headed monster in the backfield between Walensik, Clark, and Stewart. And I think you can play all of them here on this slate because Stewart does have the upside because of the type of player we know him to be, and he's coming off a 9 days of rest. Walensik and Clark, they had the carries last week, so I'm absolutely going to be getting him some exposure to these Toledo running backs. And then at the wide receiver position for Toledo, Juwan Newton is their wide receiver one. He was their wide receiver one last year, just consistently involved in the game plan, consistent fantasy point totals. He's only been under 11 DraftKings points in one game this season, so that's a super high floor that really, if you're looking at the receiving options, Fannin and Newton by far have the highest floor. I think if you're playing cash games, you got to find a way to get at least one, if not both of them in your lineups because they do give you a ton of floor. Junior Vanderrost III is the second receiving option for this Toledo team. And he's been pretty solid this season also. Double-digit fantasy points in every single game. Last week against Eastern Michigan, he actually had more targets than Juwan Newton. He had 10 of them, caught 4 of them for 60 yards. It's a little bit pricey, but you could go with a Gleason, Newton, Vanderrost stack, or you could just pick one of the two of them. But those are by far the two primary options for this Toledo receiving room. Oh, by the way, they've also got the tight end Austin Torres, who broke off a very long play against Eastern Michigan last week. He's 4,500. He plays a lot of snaps. And then you've also got Thomas Zeros, who caught a touchdown last week against Eastern Michigan. He would probably be my preferred punt play from this Toledo receiving. All right, but that's going to do it for this slate, y'all. Hopefully we gave you guys all the information that you are going to need in order to build successful DraftKings and FanDuel lineups for the Tuesday night MACtion slate. If this video helped you out in any way, please hit the like button. It helps me out a ton when you guys do that, and I cannot stress enough how much I appreciate it. And while you're at it, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That we can be with us for all of the rest of our college football content the rest of the season, as well as all our college basketball content that's coming out as well. Because remember, we've got another college basketball episode coming out tonight. We've also got our college football main slate video coming out tomorrow night. So make sure you are subscribed so you can be here for all that. But that's going to do it, y'all. Remember, if you want more from me, follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, join the Patreon. But that's going to do it. Hopefully we gave you guys everything you need in order to build some good DraftKings lineups. I love MACtion. I love this time of year. So I'll certainly be watching these 3 games. And I'll certainly be playing DFS. Best of luck to you guys on this Tuesday night DFS slate. Thank you guys for watching to this point, and I will see you guys next time.